When I opened my pool company with my two business partners, I was right out of college and I was at a family event. And somebody said to me, she said, Marcus, I heard you're going to be a pool guy. I said, yeah. She said, what a waste. I was so flabbergasted. I didn't even know what to say. And of course, there's been a few times over the years where I've had Toby Keith ringing in my ears, how do you like me now? Because I will travel around the world and people will come up to me like, yeah, that pool guy that wrote They Ask You Answer, right? Like, yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Andrew Brown. You're listening to the Lost Art of the Skilled Trades podcast, a show that shines the spotlight on careers in the skilled trades that are high-paying, honorable, rewarding, and fulfilling. The trades are the backbone of the economy that keep us running, and without them, our world would cease to exist. Today, we have a special guest, Marcus Sheridan, owner of Impact. Welcome, Marcus, to the show.
Andrew, great to be back with you, buddy.
It is awesome to have you here, Marcus. We started our business named ToolFetch in 2001. It's an online tool and supply company, and it was built to support the men and women in the trades. We carry over 2 million products from 650 different vendors. Back then, in 2001, we even worked remotely. Like, no one knew what remote meant. Like, you work from home? I'm like, yeah, we work from home. We built our first website, my brother and I. I'm dating myself, in Dreamweaver.
That's good dating right there.
Yeah, back in the day, we bootstrapped the entire company. We had a Google search. I remember Google search was a blue box. It run off this one-use server. And when I got this box, I was like, wow, I'm something from Google. I mean, I'm predating myself. SEO, search engine optimization, was easier back then, right? Email was high conversion, right? There wasn't a lot of competition. This was even before really Amazon got into everything. Today, the game has changed, right? The buyer experience has changed. People are smarter with AI, social media, this personal brands. They say Google is for all people. How do you stand out today if you're selling a product or service online?
You have to be willing to be different, because different is better than better, as my friend Sally Hogshead likes to say. I didn't always understand that, but it's incredibly true because these days we're inundated with so much information. It's the ones that are going about things a little bit differently. Those are the ones that are standing out. Really, my newest book, Endless Customers, is just this. It's really a call to disruption, a call to be willing to think differently, to do differently. And if you're going to be successful today, tomorrow, 5 years, 10 years from now, what it comes down to is you can't build your business on platforms. So you can't be Google reliant. You can't be YouTube reliant. You can't be TikTok reliant. And all those things matter, by the way. You can't just be AI reliant. What you have to have is a known and trusted brand. Brand is everything, and that will continue to be the case. And that brand must be known and trusted. The thing, though, Andrew, that's changed is it's got to be known by 3 entities. For about 30 years, it was 2 entities. Now it's 3 entities. So your brand needs to be known and trusted by customers, buyers. Pretty obvious. Number 2, search engines like Google. But number 3, and this is the one that's the big curveball, AI. AI needs to know who you are. And AI, if you want to be successful, needs to be recommending you. Because if not, you could be in serious trouble in the future. When AI, ChatGPT came out 2022, most of us were using it as a creation tool, Andrew, right? It's like, it makes funny poems, right? It's like, okay, fine. But suddenly, now, how are we using it? We've gone beyond creation. Now we're using it for recommendation. Now we're going there and we're saying, okay, who are the best, window door companies in Richmond, Virginia? That's what we're doing today. And it's giving answers. It's not giving sponsored searches. It's really, really interesting. Google made an entire business off of giving buyers what they wanted and giving it to them quickly. And it was very, very successful. And the one company that is now slower to give buyers what they want quickly is actually Google. Because how has Google changed? For a long time, it was, I want to be ranked number one in Google. Okay, fine. Yeah, it got most of the visitors. But that's not true today. And the reason for that, of course, is if you rank number one in Google, what do you see first? You're going to see 4 or 5 sponsored ads that look like regular search results, which is pretty tricky and nefarious by Google, by the way. And then you've got probably some AI summary that takes up a bunch of room. And then you've got related questions that takes up a bunch of room. And you might have a few videos. And then you finally got the first search result. Being number one is fine. It oftentimes means nothing. This is why over 50% of all Google searches don't even end in a click because they already got what they wanted. So at the same time, because of this trend, what's happening is businesses are saying, and I'm hearing this a lot. I'm hearing folks say to me, I don't get it. My traffic is struggling on my website. My Google ads, they're not working like they used to work. What do we do? Well, you know, we're seeing definitively that it's getting harder and harder to use Google ads. And I just want to tell everybody, you can't build your house on Google alone. Obviously, we've used it prolifically for 20 plus years, but that's not going to be the case for 20 plus more, not at least as we know it. And if you have a choice between getting an immediate answer where you don't have to click on any blue links to get it, and you get exactly what you want by going directly with AI, or you can go through a slower process, what are you going to choose?
I don't necessarily go to Google for a lot of the things I want to search for. I am fully interactive with ChatGPT, deep research. We're testing out Operator, and we are telling it as an AI agent to do data entry work, where somebody right now puts in orders with vendors, right? That can be replaced by Operator if you give it a set of instructions. If you want to go out and tell it to research trips, the lowest airfare, and give me the best place, the hottest spot to go to, like, it can do that type of stuff. It's so in the beginning stages, but I can see these AI agents really fully disrupting everything across the board, but making it easier for the business owner because it's expensive to, obviously, you want employees, but it could be replaced some of this stuff with technology, whether it's chat online. The game has changed.
Yeah, it really has. And those that are not in the sandbox, they're going to be in big trouble. Sometimes, Andrew, people say to me, yeah, but what if AI is the Terminator and it just ruins us and kills us all? I'm like, okay, let's assume that it does kill us all. Well, if that's the case and it's going to kill us all in 25 years, I want to have a very successful business between now and the time that it kills us all. I have learned over the course of, owning my first company in 2001 and, now, I have got ownership in multiple companies. I keep seeing the same patterns over and over again. And that is when you fight against the market, you lose. When you give the market what they want and you're willing to do that more than any of your competitors, you win. I'm not talking about like they want a better price. I'm talking about if you match the experience that they would like to have, then you can do pretty exceptional things. In my new book, Endless Customers, I talk about the 4 pillars of a known and trusted brand. These 4 pillars are rooted in giving buyers what they want and being very, very different than everybody else. So the first pillar of a known and trusted brand is that you're willing to say online what other companies aren't willing to say. All right. We'll come back to this, I'm sure. Number 2 pillar of a known and trusted brand is you need to be willing to show with video what others in your space aren't willing to show. Number 3, you need to be willing to sell in a way that others aren't willing to sell. Everybody loves to say they got some unique sales process. Man, when it comes to like home improvement, home services, the trades, etc., no, most do not have any unique sales process. And then finally, number 4, you got to be more human than others in your space are willing to be. So those are the 4 fundamental pillars of a known and trusted brand. And if I ask most people, can you honestly say that we're saying, showing, selling, and being more human online than the majority of our competitors? If they're being honest and self-aware, the answer is almost always the same, Andrew. It's no. No, we're not. And that's not going to carry you long term, and that's not going to build an extraordinary brand.
Do you think this lays like, and going back to even a service company, do you think that having a personal brand today, being different on social media, kind of gets your business to the stratosphere? If you have your own personal brand, can it lay over onto your company brand?
That's what that fourth pillar, be more human, is all about. People are much more attracted to personal brands than they are to business brands. Because I've been able to build a brand, I'm able to consistently start companies and get just immediate just traction with these businesses because people know me and I've built a brand that is this guy thinks a little bit differently. He's very, very trustworthy. If he says it, he believes it. Right. And so, that's essential in being this, as Daniel Priestley would say, a key person of influence. Right. It's like that goes a long ways. You've talked to anybody, 99% of people listening to this right now know who the Kardashians are. But if I said to those same people, what are the names of their companies? Most wouldn't be able to say the names of their companies. I don't know the names of their companies, but I know their names. That's personal brand, right? Who has more followers, Elon Musk or Tesla, right? Elon Musk has way more followers. You could actually go down a list of, some of these folks that have, a bigger following than the brand itself does. People want to interact with brands. This is actually going to just continue to grow. The old adage, we buy from those we know, like, and trust, is as true today as it's ever been, and I think will be even more true in the future.
Let's just say you sell a commodity, just a commodity. There's 20 other companies selling the same thing, even if you're selling the product in its MAP price, meaning we all sell it at the same price. So if somebody is looking on Google or is doing some sort of chat GPT search, I know you gave me the four pillars, but like, what should somebody do starting today to differentiate themselves if it's you're the same price as everybody else? Let's use my own business for a quick second, Toolfetch, right? So we carry over 2 million products, but a lot of the products are commodity based. You can buy it at us, you can buy it maybe at Home Depot, you can buy it at Amazon, right? So let's just say a drill. So everybody knows what a drill is, right? It's a Milwaukee drill. It has a part number and you have to sell it, let's say, at $100. Now you're in line with 15, 20 other companies. How does somebody really differentiate yourself if they're going down the list? They don't really know most of the companies. They know Amazon, they know Home Depot, but they don't know this tool fetch company. What would you do in that case?
Let's look at a few different examples. And it's not the same industry, but this is one of the coolest I've ever seen of a commodity product that became world renowned. And that's the folks at Liquid Death. So, Liquid Death, for anybody that's listening to this, you've probably seen them in your local convenience store. They look like some type of a energy drink or some type of alcoholic beverage. Of course, what it is, it's water, right? And so the thing inside is literally no different than that Dasani. It looks and feels, the energy around it is so different because A, they put it in a can, B, they make it look like an energy drink. And so it's like been disallowed in certain countries in Europe and certain convenience stores because people believe like, oh, that's a alcoholic beverage. It's not an alcoholic beverage. So their commitment early on with Liquid Death was we are not going to build a brand that's anything like we've seen in the water space, like in the consumable water space. And if you look at almost all the waters, they pretty much all look and feel the same. Like Deer Park and Dasani. Like fundamentally, like certainly there's people listening to this right now saying, oh, I like this or that one. Yeah, but like, are they marketed any different? The answer is no. They're in the same bottle. They've got the same like blue labels. And like for the most part, they look the same. This is why Sally Hogshead says different is better than better. It's just like there's so much to that. What's really crazy about the folks at Liquid Death is their media department, their brand department is 5 people. And so they became the second most followed beverage on social media, bigger than Coca-Cola. Why? Because they're so original of thought, right? Which is really, really wild. Now, what could a company that sells like lots of SKUs, for example, how could they stand out? Let me give an example. So if I went to this big behemoth store that was selling lots of products, I would really lean into self-service. And self-service stems from the third pillar. That third pillar is sell in ways that others aren't willing to sell. And it stems from this fact that buyers today want to be more informed than they've ever been, and they want to have more control than they've ever had. And so 75% of all buyers say they would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. That's from Gartner. So what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean that we hate salespeople. It just means that we don't want to talk to them until we're good and ready. And so how you can take advantage of this trend instead of complaining about it, because that's what a lot of folks will do is complain, which really that helps a whole lot, is you can give more control. And this is through interactive experiences, let's say on your website, on your e-commerce platform, Andrew, whatever the thing is, that allows the person to have more control and to do things that previously they would have had to have done with a salesperson by talking to a human, but now they can do it by just simply interacting with some type of, online tool app experience. So for example, on my swimming pool website, riverpoolsandspas.com, I've got a tool that allows you to compare fiberglass versus concrete versus vinyl liner in ground pools. Now, I know that when we have a sales appointment, I want someone to have gotten past the point of trying to decide what type of pool they want. Because if they're still trying to figure that out, I'm probably not going to make a sale. So we want to make sure that our sales team, that we've gotten through that. So we got this recommendation tool on the site. And this recommendation tool is so brutally honest that every single day after someone answers a series of questions based on their needs, it's very unbiased, it gives them, based on what you just said, we're going to recommend to you that you choose a vinyl liner in ground pool or that you choose a concrete pool, not a fiberglass pool. Every day I'm recommending to multiple people, don't buy our stuff, which is crazy. That's how you become a known and trusted brand. You do it differently than others. But let's say someone is trying to debate, like, what's the best type of drill for me? You might say most people know that, but that's making false assumptions. And so if you have a tool that allows someone to just answer a few questions and then it gives a recommendation of which tool they should choose, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, so you're going to recommend the, XYZ 1000 because I said I need this, that I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be focused on this. That's powerful. That's what sets people apart. And this is not something that you're going to typically see with a lot of these e-com shops or a lot of these, just any company in general. How many times have you in your business, if you're listening to this, how many times have you been asked, well, if you're me, which would you choose? Oh, I'm trying to decide between, concrete versus pavers versus stamped versus stone. Like, which one should I choose? Okay. Well, how come you don't have a tool that allows them to decide that? And they feel like at that point it was their decision because they were the ones that went on the journey. They answered their questions. So self-service is a mega trend. There's 5 main types of self-service. This is one way that you could set yourself apart.
So an interactive tool, it's more hands-off. So an example would be someone's calling up and is looking for a radiant heater, right? So a lot of people sort of know what a radiant tube heater is, but they don't know the size, the square footage, the BTU. Like, do I need propane? Do I need natural? Like, there's questions, right? So if I'm speaking to somebody, I have to have a 20-minute conversation with the person, right? That's 20 minutes of my time.
Wasted time.
Yeah, to some degree. Sometimes it turns into a sale, but sometimes it's just, okay, send me a quote or.
Yeah, it's just inefficient, fundamentally. It's inefficient because they should ideally have gotten the answer from you already through an interactive experience.
Right. So if they had an interactive tool of some sort, which basically is, I'm asking the questions, they got me on the phone, right? So I'm asking those questions. If you put that into an interactive tool, it separates us a little bit different than the next company.
There's 4 fundamental tools my swimming pool website has. 3 are live, 1's coming out. Each represents a period of where they are in the buyer's journey. The first one that's not live right now, but I'm working on it because it's a void in the buyer's journey stages, is, am I even going to use a pool? Like, is this a good investment for me? So it's essentially an assessment tool that assesses your lifestyle. And then based on you, your lifestyle, your wants, desires, goals, it gives you an honest score as to whether or not a swimming pool is right for you. Very creative. That's a fundamental question that people have. Now, once they've decided on a pool and they've gotten through that, the next stage is, well, what type of pool do I want? We have that tool on the site that gives those recommendations. I already explained that one. Once they know they want a fiberglass pool, currently we have a tool on their site that asks a series of questions, and then it gives a recommendation for a particular shape and size we offer. No different than if a salesperson was sitting with them in the home. A homeowner said, I'm not sure what shape I want. What do you think I should get based on what you see out there in my yard? Salesperson's going to ask a series of questions, and then they're going to give a recommendation. Well, once again, can we replicate that online, giving the buyer more control, giving the higher sense of satisfaction and more investment in us? Yes, we can. And so we've got a tool on our site that gives a recommendation for a pool shape and size. Very powerful. People fill that out all the time. And then the final is, Well, once they know the shape and size, we've got to build and price your pool tool on our site. So now they can get an actual estimate. Now, we do this as a manufacturer of fiberglass pools. Think about that. So we're not actually installing the pool. Well, we do in Virginia for my company. Our website is the manufacturer site. And so it doesn't install the pool. It sells the shell to the dealers like myself all over the country. For those that don't know, I started the company and eventually sold the manufacturing side. So what's wild about this is it just gives a range. But because it gives a range, Andrew, that's more than most companies are willing to give. No other companies are willing to give that range. It's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And this is something that I've tested a ton with trades, with home services. And I started a software company last year, which is called PriceGuide.ai. And PriceGuide allows anybody with any type of business, but especially a service business, trades, home improvement, anything like that, to quickly and easily create a pricing estimator that they can put on their website. And the second they put it on there and show it prominently on their homepage and answer that fundamental question that buyers have when they know they need something, which is roughly how much is this going to cost? That's the number one question in the world that anybody has when they know they have a need, a problem, an issue. I need new windows and doors. I need a swimming pool. Doesn't matter. It's like, well, first I want to know, am I in the game or not? Can I even afford this? Is this even possible? That comes down to that question. And so when you put this estimator on your site, and the AI, by the way, helps you build it, and you can do this in less than 30 minutes, we see consistently, and I've got data from companies now all over the world because we have so many customers that we've been able to build up in a short period of time, is you see on average a 300% increase in leads. So 300% increase, all because exact same amount of traffic that you had before to your site. But now you're answering the most fundamental question that people have when they're looking to make a serious acquisition, which is roughly how much is this going to cost?
I had this conversation yesterday with a guy who owns a roofing company. And I said to him, do you offer pricing? Like most companies, you have to call, someone will get back to you. I just want to know the price. So I completely agree with you, but he didn't do that. Basically, it's take the information, then go down to the customer's home and then take a look at the roof and then get an estimate.
Yeah, he's like everybody else. If he had any concept of how many leads he was losing because he's not willing to address that first conversation of roughly what is this going to cost, it would make him sick to his stomach. I mean, he would be sick for weeks. If he could count how much revenue he's lost because he's ignoring a fundamental question that buyers have. If anybody's listening to this right now and has researched how much something costs online and you can't find it, immediately you get pissed. You don't keep looking on that website. You don't call the company. You keep searching until you find what you're looking for. That's how you and I shop. All of us listening to this right now. Your customers are no different. The problem is you got a lot of companies like the fellow you're talking to yesterday that wants to control the buyer. And the last thing buyers want is to be controlled. And so if you can find a way to make it a win-win, what's the win-win? You give them a general estimate, not a quote, and a general estimate with a pricing tool like Price Guide, and they get what they wanted, which is a sense for what it's going to cost. You get what you wanted, which is a lead in your database. Now everybody wins, and it's glorious. How anybody would not do that today, I can make a promise to you right now, Andrew, and that is this. When it comes to home services and home improvement, every home services contractor in the United States, within 5 years, 90% of all these contractors are going to have a pricing estimator on their website. 90% in 5 years. What's sad is a bunch of the people listening to this right now don't believe me and are going to wait until their competitor in their local market does it. Then they're going to freak out, and then they're going to scramble, and then they're going to add it. And they lost potentially hundreds and hundreds of qualified leads simply because they were living in the Stone Ages. Doesn't make any sense.
And I can back this up too. I remember I was at a Grant Cardone show like 6 years ago. And I remember I was in the front row watching him. People don't know he's a social media guy and he's in real estate, but he was making phone calls to service companies like roofing companies, contractors. We were hearing the call live. Like all he wanted was a price and they couldn't quote him a price at all. And literally he's like, this is what happens every single day. All these leads are coming in, but they're going nowhere because no one can give you the pricing or give you a roundabout price. Someone has to call you back. I need this, I need that. And this is exactly what happens, especially like you said, if 75% don't want to deal with a salesperson, and I agree with that. Nobody wants to be bothered. They want to do their own research. And when they're ready, they're ready. And if you have all that information available for somebody, videos, when it comes to what you were saying, how to build those estimators, if you don't have that on your website, you're going to lose that opportunity. So I completely 100% agree with you on that.
Again, it's like sitting at the beach. You had your lounge chair set up during low tide. You see the tide coming in, and you're like, I'm not moving. Like, no, no, you're going to move. You always move. You do not beat the tide. The tide does what the tide does, whether or not you or I have strong opinions about it. And so you can have a strong opinion about what I'm saying right now. But the truth is, if I said to you, man to man, woman to woman, would you prefer it if someone gave you some type of estimate tool or a recommendation tool or an assessment tool on their website before you were forced to call them to get the same information? Would you prefer that? Your answer is going to be, well, yes. Don't add a but afterwards. Don't say, but my situation. No, 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 no. Your situation isn't special, isn't unique. I didn't always understand this as a business owner, and it probably cost me millions, Andrew. The second I realized that my opinions don't mean squat in the market, that what matters is the market and where the market's going, and it's my job to meet the market where the market is. That's what we signed up for as a business owner. That's why the title of my first book was called They Ask You Answer, because when they're asking for it, and not just the questions, it's like how they want to learn, how they want to behave, where they want to do their research. That's the key. That's what they want. And so, yeah, there's 5 types of self-assessment tools. I talk a lot about it in Endless Customers. That section alone of the book could make you millions of dollars if you follow it.
I want to roll back for a quick moment when you kind of first started your river pools and spa company back in the day. Every company, and this is really for business owners too, every company gets to a point where you hit a ceiling, you can't move forward, you can't grow. And there always is like an aha moment. You have to get real with things that you keep doing over and over again as a business owner. You're getting the same results, right? When did you have that aha moment? Because you wrote that book, They Ask You Answer. Were you at that point in your business where, we can't grow or we've hit a ceiling and we need to think differently? Were you having that aha moment back then?
I had a financial gun to my head in 2009. I thought we were going to lose the business because of the crash. And up to that point, we had done marketing like everybody else. Shotgun approach. Back in those days, there was, devil himself, Yellow Pages, for those that can recall those days. Then you had TV and radio and print and direct mail and just trying all of it, losing our tails. And that's when I said, man, we have got to evolve. And I started to learn about the changing buyer. And I said, I keep going online for information. That's where I'm going to learn stuff. Why can't we become the Wikipedia of pools? So, I sat there and brainstormed every question I'd ever received as a pool guy. And there's hundreds of questions. And then one by one, we addressed them on our website through text, through video over the next couple of years. And that's how we became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. By 2012, we were the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. And we were just rocking by that point. And that's why, we started manufacturing our own pools because we had so much trust built in the market. We were getting leads from all over the country, but yet we were only installing pools in Virginia. And so I said, let's start manufacturing. And the manufacturing, like freaking fire, took off. Everybody wanted a river pool because we had the most trust in the marketplace. That's why it's a tale as old as time. The difference between today and 2009 is, I really, for the most part, just focus on producing content on my website and did some YouTube. And that was enough for us to become numero uno in our industry. I couldn't do that today and get the same results. I'd have to be better. I'd have to be smarter. Yes, you still want to produce that content. You still want to address those things that others in your space aren't talking about on your website. But you got to use all the platforms. You got to use the social medias. You got to go on TikTok, even though you're like, I don't like TikTok and I don't like China. Okay, that's fine, but you still need to be on TikTok. You ain't got to use it personally, but your business needs to be there because your buyers are starting to go there. You got to be on YouTube. There's an argument to be made that YouTube might be more important than your website in, 6, 7 years. I don't know if that's going to happen. There's a case for that. And so Video is not going anywhere but up. And so you better, if you're really serious about growing a brand that's trusted, you better be all in on video and you better start thinking like a media company, which means you're finding every opportunity to show everything you do. And what's cool about the trades is the trades are so visual, and anybody now that has any type of, blue collar business in the trades should be saying, I need to be producing a video every single day on every single job site of everything we're doing. And I need to be showing it. I need to be showing it on Facebook. I'll show it on the gram. I'm going to show it on the TikTok. I'm going to show it on YouTube because we're a media company and we're building something special. And I'm not going to have some just small time shop that as soon as I get tired, I just got to let the business go because I've not built anything. I want to build something, a legacy that's going to outlive you. That's a brand that other people are going to want to buy. That's what you want. That's what Tommy Mello did, right? This is what you want to do. At least most of us, not everybody necessarily, wants to have such financial peace and prosperity. But if that's what you want, you're going to have to do much better with your marketing. And it starts with ability to build an extraordinary brand.
They do say you're a marketing company first. I remember sitting down and speaking to a well-known plumber. His name is Roger Wakefield.
I know, Raj. He actually embraced They Ask You Answer. He heard me speak something like 10 years ago. He wasn't doing video at the time. And he said, this is the way. That was his catalyst, was seeing me at Social Media Marketing World all those years ago. And he and I are still friends.
I was on his podcast about a year and a half ago, and I spent time with him. And, I know his story. He's actually going to be on my podcast in a handful of weeks as well. But he always said that I just wanted to make my phone ring, right? He used a marketing agency, spent all this money. It was a waste of time. And then he sat in, one of these conferences and somebody said that YouTube is the second largest search engine. He's like, wait, what?
Right. That was me. That was the conference he was at. That was me.
Oh, that you? It's a full circle. There you go. You really had a life-changing event, which you obviously were the impetus to this. And he went all in. And it's not like he went half-ass. He went all in. And I was down in his studio. Like, he's got a nice podcast set up. I was on his podcast and I was on his live. He took something that he was obviously in the trades and he had a plumbing company, but he took it and just expanded it, 20x across the board. So it is possible. I've now built my TikTok following to about 22,000. I was about 800 about 5 months ago. Good engagement, a lot of tradespeople there. And obviously it was going to be shut down. I was like, shit, I've made all this strides and momentum and now it's gone. So you're on rented land. Like, it is worrisome that things can be shut down, that you have a massive following on. So you can't put all your eggs in one basket. Otherwise, overnight you can be shut down. But I think doubling down, and that's what I'm doing, is, going back to YouTube and creating more long format type content like this podcast and doing more informational type videos about the trades and stuff related to our own business. But if you're not doing that, you're going to be passed by. You really are.
That's exactly right, buddy. And we're going to see so much upheaval and disruption occur because of the amount of change that's happening with today's buyer. And again, going back to that's why I feel like endless customers is important for today's blue collar worker, contractor. I don't want you to be left behind. My dad was a builder growing up and he filed bankruptcy. And I remember as a young man, I was probably 12. I was out in my backyard and my dad's work truck was next to the garage. And some man walks into our yard. He gets into the truck and he drives it away. I said, what just happened? Why is that man taking your truck, Dad? Say, that's the bank. And I said, whoa, it really hit me, And I said to myself, throughout my youth, I was constantly the one that had to answer the phone because back then we didn't have caller ID and it could be the credit card companies calling. So these things left a clear impression on me, Andrew, which was, I want a life of financial peace. I watched my parents argue, eventually divorce, primarily over money. And so if we can create a life that allows us financial peace, then I think that's one of the most beautiful things that we can do for ourselves, for our children, for our families, right? And our legacy. To do that, though, you cannot continue to follow the same rules that you've been given by everyone else in your space and expect to get extraordinary results. You have to be willing to make your own rules because remember, the rule breakers eventually become the rule makers and everybody else becomes the rule followers. And that happens in every industry if you're willing to be the one that speaks up.
It's an amazing story, and I'm sure that that left, an imprint on your life and, the way you do things. And you go back to a lot of people go back to an event of some sort or some sort of tragic event of some sort, and they want to do better. They change, they grow. So, I mean, thank you for sharing that story because that's an impactful story. Yeah, it leaves a huge mark.
Leaves a mark, man. Obviously, I'm very grateful for all of that I just said, because otherwise I might not have learned those things at a young age and it might not have left such an impression.
Sometimes you have to go through that pain to be the person you are today. For instance, with me and my backstory about wanting to be an IT technician, I mean, that's really what I wanted to be. But I was down on 9/11 and I helped tradespeople and first responders find survivors. It's a tragic event. And that changed me on my trajectory instead of just going into IT is to really support the men and women in the trades. Like people have these stories and you always think it's like somebody else, but then it happens to you and you're like, it changes everything, but you're in a path that you want to be in.
That's very, very powerful. And it's like, look, you've got a story, I've got a story. Mentioned earlier, be more human than others are willing to be is one of the core pillars of becoming a known and trusted brand. Part of that is the willingness to be honest and transparent about your story. There's always what everybody sees, and then there's the real story behind that. And those things genuinely resonate with folks. And it's like when I do business with, let's say, a contractor, I'm not just doing business with him or her. I'm doing business with their family that they're feeding. I'm doing business with all the things that they touch. Their life is enabled by the business that I'm giving them. All those things make a difference. They actually make a difference, right? The quicker you can make personal connections with those that you're potentially doing business with, the better off you're going to be. This again is an argument as to why video is such a big deal. So why podcasting is so great, Andrew. I mean, obviously you're building a great brand for your organization and making connections that you never would have made otherwise. A lot of work. It's a lot of work, but you're doing the work and it's paying off. I look at you on LinkedIn. I'm like, that guy does really, really well on LinkedIn. You're active there. You got a big following, got a lot of engagement. You're putting in the time and it's really impressive to see.
The other part of this is that what people don't see is it's not instant gratification, it's delayed gratification. A lot of people don't want to put the time and energy. Look, it's a lot of work. What you do when you speak across the country, it's a lot of work, but you love it. But sometimes you don't get that instant gratification. When you and I had spoken prior, you had mentioned about it took time for you to get speaking gigs, right? You had to start somewhere. And a lot of people give up at that point, but you didn't give up, right? A couple of years in, maybe you got your first break and then you got traction. People give up before they really take off.
Yeah, I mean, it's that classic like overnight success story that took 20 years. That's generally how it is. For my first 14, 15 years of owning my pool company, I never made more than $100,000 in a year. There's this phrase that you've probably heard before. It's like we often overestimate what we can do in a year, underestimate what we can do in 10, right? So in 2009, I'm like looking at bankruptcy. I've never made six figures in my life. By 2020, I was a multimillionaire. That's how life can work if you work it. Obviously, I don't say that in any form to say, look at what I've done as like, I'm awesome. It's just that compounding effect of building a brand, of doing the little things that can create this momentum in your life. And it's beautiful. And, if you believe in, compound interest, you ought to see the power of compound information. It works the same way. And it's just as powerful in terms of your personal brand and how your brand becomes worth something. Every time Andrew does a podcast episode and does a LinkedIn post and does his TikTok, it's like that is an investment he's making. And that's compounding information into this, account called his brand. Now it's growing and growing and growing to eventually, you become, like they say, at that point, you've built something really extraordinary. I would just challenge everyone to think like that and to make sure, though, that you're getting over your own feelings because that's where it gets dangerous. Well, I don't like video, so I'm not going to do video. Doesn't matter. What does a buyer want? No buyer's ever gone to your website and said, gee, I'd love to see a video right now, but I'm sure they don't like video, so I'm going to give them a pass, right? That's not how it works. And so we meet the buyer where they are. We got to be willing to say what others aren't willing to say. You need to be willing to talk about things like pricing. You need to be talking about competitors, not in a bad way, just openly, in a good way, because that's what people are asking. You need to be willing to compare stuff because that's what people are asking. You need to be willing to do self-service because that's what people are asking. You need to be willing to call it what it is, call a spade, and be honest, become known as that thought leader in your space when other people are not. These are the types of things that you can do. Let me give an example of this. We started doing pools in 2001. The way a fiberglass pool was built, Andrew, was you dug a hole, you put a sand base at the bottom, you put that pool shell on that sand base, you backfilled around it with sand, filled it with water, poured your concrete patio around it, and that is a pool installation. And we said, this is dumb because sand has problems. Sand settles, sand washes. 2,000 years ago, the Bible said, don't build your house on sand, and yet we're building pools on sand? Doesn't make any sense. And so we really talked about it. We said, the industry's wrong. You should be building your pools on crushed stone. And here's the reasons why. It goes down compacted, it's much better backfill, much better base, yada, yada. Well, when we started this process in 2001, about 80% of the fiberglass pools that went in were done with sand. Today, about 80% of the fiberglass pools that go in are done with crushed stone. That's what I mean when I say just don't sit back. You got to be willing to stake your claim and create your own IP. The competitors might say bad things, but the world will respond because, again, the rule breakers become the rule makers.
I feel like sometimes you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? So me putting out videos and content that I did, I always had a speech impediment when I was a kid. Like I was always like conscious of all that, and turning the camera on, I was scared shitless. And look, I get flamed online and people say this and people say that. And some people give up because they don't want to hear from, the naysayers or the haters. And it's just what it is. As you rise in fame and people get to know you, it's just they come out of the woodworks. But for me, I'm doing it for a greater cause and, building a brand just like you built your brand. But you have to be willing to put the time and energy into it. It's not something that could be built 6 months, a year. This is like years. 3 years, 5 years, even 10 years down the road to build something. Like you said about your brand, if you can start a company and people know you, they trust you. It's trust, right? At that point, you built a trusted brand. They know you that whatever you're going to put your name on, people are going to buy from you because they trust you.
And the need for that's never going away, Andrew. That's why you have to understand evergreen principles if you're going to build something that scales over time. I've had a pool company for 25 years. That's not as old as some people's organizations, but that's a lot longer than a lot of pool companies make it. Trust me. And I suspect we're going to have it a lot longer because we're going to continue to lean on that because we know trust is that one thing that regardless of what happens with AI, regardless of what happens with the economy, with technology, that it's going to be pivotal to our success as we move forward.
I just want to quickly pivot over, which it's interesting you shared that your father was a builder. I was trying to understand sort of your connection to the blue collar world, which I didn't realize that your son is an electrician. And I saw you did a post and you said that at 12, he had his own workshop. At 14, he was working part time. 17, he had a full time gig. And now he runs his own truck at 21. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. And here's what's wild. When he was 17, I said, my son's working full time as an electrician. And I said this on Twitter and I said, he will be making six figures probably by the time he's 21, 22, 23 years old. And he's going to have no college debt and he's going to have an extraordinary life and he's never going to look for work. And somebody on Twitter said, and I'll never ever forget this, yeah, but he'll still just be an electrician. And I thought, oh, you little SOB. It goes back to when I opened my pool company with my two business partners. I was right out of college and I was at a family event and somebody said to me, she said, Marcus, I heard you're going to be a pool guy. I said, yeah. She said, what a waste. I was so flabbergasted. I didn't even know what to say. And of course, there's been a few times over the years where I've had Toby Keith ringing in my ears, how do you like me now? Because I will travel around the world and people will come up to me like, yeah, that pool guy that wrote They Ask You Answer, right? Yeah, that's me. So, do I have an affinity towards the trades? You better believe it. I think they're the backbone of the economy. And I also think what's really wild now is that we thought AI was going to hurt blue collar. No, 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 no. AI is hurting white collar. Blue collar is going to have a much longer road in terms of like a runway before AI. I don't think you're going to see a lot of, Optimus robots in your crawl space anytime soon. I don't anticipate that anytime soon. Could it happen in 100 years? Yes. But I don't expect it happening in the next 20 years. I think a lot of your white collar friends are going to be looking at you like, man, you were right. I'm sitting here levied with debt from college and I can't find a job, within my white collar space. And you're just sitting there, running this incredible plumbing business or whatever business, and you're happier too. It's also interesting to me, Andrew. I own an agency coaching company with 45 employees. And I got a pool company that had like 45 employees during COVID too. So I had these two companies during COVID. One all like blue collar, non-college graduates. The other one white collar, all college graduates. Guess which one had all the like mental health problems during COVID? And guess which one was like had the happiest employees and just didn't really skip a beat during COVID? There's something magical about the trades in that regard. I'm sick and tired of people giving it a bad rap. I'm not micro, but I want to do my part in the conversation. And I'm going to continue to be a part of it for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah, that's great to see that your son is pursuing something. Obviously, he's good with his hands and, he's in a unique opportunity to do extremely, extremely well, as you even stated. And, the amount of different trades that we need, whether it's electricians and welders and carpenters, I'm not going to spew the statistics with you, but good place. There is a heavy disruption across the board when it comes to white collar jobs and AI, and I see it across the board. I mean, I'm having discussions with AI, even like financial stuff, where I'm loading in my financials. I can call my accountant. I can just, AI can just give me all that information. And you compound that by a lawyer or other, types of people you would go to, typically, AI is going to completely disrupt that across the board. And I think blue collar in the next handful of years, and you could already see it with Gen Z, that the Wall Street Journal said that they're becoming the tool belt generation. It really is that they are really looking at college versus a trades path. And some of them are choosing the trades. I go down to a show called Skills USA in Atlanta, and there's 6,500 kids who compete against each other in welding and carpentry. I mean, that's like the future generation of like tradespeople, and it's thriving. And there's advocating for the trades. It's super exciting where the trades are going. The old adages are still there, but it's changing through social media, and it's an exciting time. And I think your son is in a great position. Every kid's got to make that decision if you want to sign on that dotted line and take that huge loan, but it's really, you got to decide if it's right for you. But the trades is an option, and you can make good money, and you don't have to go into debt.
Now, the tools of the trade.
I can literally ask you questions for the next hour, but obviously this podcast is only about 45 minutes. This was an amazing conversation, Marcus. But in every episode, we always ask our guests a tools of the trade. If someone is just starting their business today online, we touched upon this, what are the crucial steps they should take to build their brand? So if I'm starting now tomorrow.
I'm going to be real quick about this. I'd start doing videos immediately. Everything you do, every job site you walk on, I would just start doing videos of it. That's number one. Number two, I'd have a pricing estimator on your website. That's going to get you whatever people do come to your site, they're probably going to convert. And so get that priceguide.ai. Number three, one of the most important things that you can do, we follow this rule newly, that is something that we've evolved with my swimming pool company, and I'm now teaching it to a lot of other businesses, is the 5-minute rule when it comes to all leads. Speed to lead is everything in the future. And if you will call your leads within 5 minutes of them reaching out to you, there is a 900% greater chance that you will have a conversation with them than if you wait 30 minutes or later. So be obsessed about when you get a lead, call the lead that second, and it will make a huge difference for you.
That is great advice. Videos that's today. People want to see you. You have to put yourself out there. You have to kind of get over the fact of being on video. A lot of people don't want to do that, but being on video, taking video of the job site, a day in the life of what you're actually doing. I do see a lot of people who are actually live streaming their job. They're just literally just on TikTok, just live streaming, which is great. The pricing estimator, and that's where it's going today. No one wants to wait for a price. I mean, if you're going to wait for a price, someone's going to the next company. And also the 5-minute leads, we do that as well. Like immediately a quote comes in, boom, within 5 minutes, I'm calling the potential lead at that point. And sometimes it converts right then and there. So I think speed is everything. So where do people find you on social media, website, if they want to go down that rabbit hole, find out more about Marcus?
Yeah, biggest recommendation I'd have if you've enjoyed anything I've said today is go to endlesscustomers.com and get the book. And the book will have, if you follow it, I mean, it's a system that will have an extraordinary impact on your brand and on your company. That's number one. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very good on LinkedIn. Andrew, is too. So if you're not connected with both of us, you should be. I'd say those are the two things, but make sure you go to endlesscustomers.com.
Yeah, definitely check it out. Check out Marcus's new book that's coming out. Marcus, thank you so much for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
And thank you to our listeners. If you want more valuable insights and trades-related information, head over to andrewbrown.net and join our Trades Movement newsletter, where we advocate for the trades. We share inspirational stories like Marcus. We provide resources, and you join a passionate trades community. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss another episode. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Lost Art of the Skilled Trades. Visit us at andrewbrown.net for more resources and tips. Join us next time for real stories and meaningful initiatives as we celebrate our men and women in the skilled trades and shape the future together.